fruit deserves to rise to the top of the global all-stars on my Carnivore Scores food rankings chart. Welcome to the B.rad podcast, where we explore ways to pursue peak performance with passion throughout life without taking ourselves too seriously. I'm Brad Kearns, New York Times bestselling author, former #3 world-ranked professional triathlete, and Guinness World Record Masters athlete. I connect with experts in diet, fitness, and personal growth, and deliver short breather shows where you get simple, actionable tips to improve your life right away. Let's explore beyond the hype, hacks, shortcuts, and sciencey talk to laugh, have fun, and appreciate the journey. It's time to be rad. Welcome to part 3 of how I optimize testosterone naturally. In part 1, we talked about sleep, rest, recovery, and downtime. And of course, things start from optimizing your sleep habits before you even bother taking on the challenge of, let's say, transforming your diet or getting your fitness endeavors up to par. So sleep, rest, recovery, downtime. That was part 1. Go listen to that. Part 2 was about cleaning up your diet, and especially the simple objective to ditch the big 3 toxic modern foods, which are refined industrial seed oils, also known as vegetable oils, refined grains, and sugars. And of course, sweetened beverages made with refined sugar. So when you can look on labels and start becoming astute as to how prevalent those 3 categories of agents are in the modern food supply, and that would be in most everything in a box, in a wrapper, in the frozen section, of course fast food, of course convenience store food, but also, as I detailed with my P.F. Chang story in the previous episode, they are prevalent in the restaurant meals that are cooked in the medium all the way up to expensive restaurant meals will generally have these agents that are known to cause demise, cancer, and instant disturbance in healthy arterial function when ingested. They are still included in outside dining. So be very careful restaurant dining, and of course, get them out of your house. And now that you're cleaned up your act, now that you have all that extra space on your pantry cupboard and in your fridge, you will come into the part 3 show here on emphasizing nutrient-dense, easy to digest foods. In shorthand, let's talk about meat and fruit. And if you think of that distinction, what I'm talking about there is kind of drifting away from the popular restrictive diets where we were told to deliberately restrict carbohydrate intake in favor of improving our insulin sensitivity and losing weight and all that kind of thing. So any kind of restrictive diet that's well formulated will deliver wonderful results when you depart from the unfettered access to indulgent foods that represents the standard diet in the developed nations, right? So anything will work. Could be vegan, could be strict carnivore, could be a 16-8 fasting pattern or a 2 meals a day. Hey, there's a plug for a great book, right? Anything you do to wake up, ditch those toxic modern foods, and get into a pattern where you're not overfeeding yourself and under-exercising, you're going to come out with better blood work, you're going to lose excess body fat, most likely, and things are going to be good. But then, as we tread further down the path of healthy living and start to see these benefits of increased energy, vitality, getting away from the lifelong insidious weight gain that is caused by consuming processed foods, then we want to consider the idea of optimizing cellular energy status at all times so we can have the most active, energetic lifestyle. And I've done quite a bit of content in the past year on this idea of energy balance and getting good at burning energy internally, choosing the most energizing foods in the diet, and then in turn, being as active as you possibly can in pursuit of health, longevity, disease protection. So what diet camp am I in? Am I carnivore? Am I keto? Am I the intermittent fasting guru? I would prefer to say that I recommend a nutrient-dense, easy-to-digest diet And when I say easy to digest, that's a nod to the very popular animal-based movement and the emerging science that some of the plant superstar foods that we've long been told should be the centerpiece of healthy diet can have adverse consequences due to the sensitivities, individual sensitivities to natural plant toxins. So when I talk about preparing my wonderful green smoothie every morning where I put in large quantities of raw, frozen kale, celery, spinach, beets, carrots, and drinking that thing down and then feeling digestive pain and discomfort and bloating for hours afterward, just about every day, I had an awakening to think, if this is causing these adverse consequences every time I eat it, it cannot be that healthy for me. And so the innocent and smiling kale that is held in high regard, we have to second guess this and realize that we have individual sensitivities to plant toxins, and the foods that are in the highest category, the most plant antigens are roots, seeds, stems, and leaves. These are the most protected parts of the plant, the stuff that the plant does not want you to eat. In contrast, the fruit of the plant bearing fruit, would love for you to consume the fruit. And so fruit, by and large, has very minimal concerns with natural plant toxins and adverse reactions. There are not a lot of fruit allergies out there when you compare it to peanut allergies, overall nut allergies, gluten sensitivity, gluten allergies, things like that. So when I go into my Carnivore Scores chart that forms a wonderful, handy guideline for how to eat the most nutritious diet and navigate to the plant foods that have a lot of health properties and are minimal risk, that's when we're really operating at the highest level and perhaps transcending a lot of the gimmicky restrictive diets that have become popular or the takes on those diets that have become popular. I was just looking at a book title called Dirty Lazy Keto, which apparently has become a bestseller, my agent tells me. And so very clever headline, and the girl had great success losing a lot of weight with a looser approach to keto. And so it's kind of an oxymoron when you think of a title Dirty Lazy Keto, because keto is a very restrictive, precise diet where you have to track your macros and do all that stuff. So it's kind of ridiculous that we're at this point where we have to modify and rephrase things to such extent that they lose their original meaning. And so when I talk in broad terms about restrictive diets, I personally am rethinking the rationale and the need to do so, as opposed to going and nourishing yourself with a broad range of the most nutritious foods on earth, providing the carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and the micronutrients you need to thrive. So fruit has largely been marginalized by the ancestral health, primal paleo, whatever, low carb, keto, because of the high sugar content. But let's get sensible for a moment and realize that the overall benefits of fruit, the tremendous amount of micronutrients they offer, the fiber, the water content, is not going to harm you in the manner that consuming any processed food that contains processed carbs, sugar will. So fruit deserves to rise to the top of the global all-stars on my Carnivore Scores food rankings chart. And that will ensure when you choose fruit and other carbohydrate sources that are nutritious and easy to digest, by and large, categories like root vegetables have much less plant toxin concerns than the categories of roots, seeds, stems, and leaves. So those are things like sweet potatoes and squash. And so I have on my food rankings chart many suggested plant foods that I favor and recommend due to their nutritional value and generally low concerns with plant toxin sensitivity. But again, everything is individualized when you're determining how you react to a certain food. And so as I go through the list, avocados, great source of monounsaturated fat and minimal concerns with plant toxins. Dark chocolate, I think, is a true superfood. It's my most wonderful and pleasurable indulgence in my life. It has those wonderful high levels of antioxidants, flavonols, polyphenols, and I'm always sourcing the very best dark chocolate and staying away from the commodity stuff that has a lot of objectionable concerns, including sustainability and fair labor practices. Of course, the category of fermented foods are widely regarded as providing tons of health benefits. And because they have been fermented, you are minimizing your exposure to plant toxins very significantly, to the extent that there's almost no concerns with adverse reaction to the fermented foods, things like kefir, kimchi, kombucha, miso, natto, olives, pickles, sauerkraut, tempeh. These are nourishing your healthy gut bacteria with little to no objections. Now, with certain vegetables, if you enjoy them and if you cook them, soak them, sprout them, ferment them, whatever the case may be, that's what humans have been doing for millions of years in order to be able to digest plant foods that are otherwise much more highly toxic, okay? So when you cook something, it neutralizes the toxins significantly. That's why you can probably handle broccoli, but you're not going to be wanting to chomping on raw broccoli or cauliflower because they have very high levels of plant toxins. Same with kale. If you cook it or masticate it for a salad, you're going to minimize that exposure to plant toxins. Nevertheless, the leafy green category is still a high category for plant toxins. So it's choose wisely when it comes to vegetables and certain fruits. People can have sensitivities to certain fruits. Some work better than the others. Raw honey is on the list as a fantastic source of carbohydrates for energy replenishment, especially for healthy, active people that have been burning calories at workouts. It has great antioxidant, antibacterial properties, and of course is not going to have anywhere remotely the concern of consuming processed sugar from your Skittles and your 7-Eleven smoothie. I like nut butters, as you know, because I market Brad's Macadamia Masterpiece with the very high quality raw ingredients. But nuts and seeds, being the original life force of the plant, are highly protected, highly defensible, they call it. So they can have adverse reactions in certain people, as you're familiar with the prevalence of nut allergies. So choose wisely, and order a jar of the very best Macadamia Masterpiece. Try it, and if you have adverse reactions, then send it back. Don't eat nuts if you don't like them and that you react poorly to them. Seaweed is one of the superfoods of the planet. Great source of iodine, which is deficient in the diet now, so that's on my list of plant foods. I mentioned sweet potatoes and squash. I mentioned I mentioned choosing the very best oils, and that would be first cold press extra virgin olive oil, domestically grown, would be the top ranked category there. Staying away from the processed seed oils. I have a section about supplements, my favorites being whey protein, creatine, organ meats, things like that. And that wraps up the bottom of the chart where I talk about the plant foods. And I want to keep these shows in a nice, reasonable length, so I'm going to wrap up part 3 of the series on how I optimize testosterone naturally, where we focused on choosing nutrient-dense foods, including fruit and other plants. Thank you for listening. Love to hear your feedback. podcast@bradventures.com, and get ready for more in the wonderful series coming up. We're going to talk about the tiered rankings of the most nutritious and well-sourced animal foods, and that is going by the Carnivore Scores food rankings chart that you can download for free at bradkearns.com. Thank you so much for listening to the B.rad podcast. We appreciate all feedback and suggestions. Email podcast@bradventures.com and visit bradkearns.com to download 5 free ebooks and learn some great long cuts to a longer life, how to optimize testosterone naturally, become a dark chocolate connoisseur, and transition to a barefoot and minimalist shoe lifestyle.